Okay, this is Keres versus Alfred Tarnowski in the 1952 Olympiad. Keres playing white, plays e4. Black now plays e5. Knight f3, knight c6. We have a classic Ruy Lopez now. Bishop b5. Ruy Lopez, named after a Spanish priest, is played by several world champions from both the white and black side. It remains a tried and tested opening at all levels. This is the a quiet variation of bishop e7. Now, instead of a more standard move, Keres plays this queen e2. So this might be an anti-marshal system to try and avoid the marshal gambit. b5 was played, bishop b3, d6. So white plays c3 now, which is fairly standard. White's not worrying too much if black plays bishop g4, because the bishop really hasn't got much of a future if h3, bishop h4, because it can be a target later. Because white's one of white's manoeuvres is a knight coming to d2, sometimes f1 to g3. So this bishop g4 isn't as good as it looks to pin the knight. Knight a5, bishop c2, c5. So this is all fairly standard kind of play by black. Black's trying to gain space on the queen side and also discourage d4 from white. White, instead of playing d4 though, or d3, plays now a4, trying to get some pressure on the a file going. But also perhaps encourage black forward like this, b4. So maybe black's pawns are not so fluid now. White plays d3 now. So white spotted that perhaps this c4 square can be used as a useful outpost. But there's a positional sacrifice coming up later in this game. So white carries on now as though the d file is going to be useful. So he's already planning something relating to this d file and increasing the pressure there. Now knight e3, so the knight's not only eyeing d5 now but f5, so perhaps the other knight can eventually try to come to f5, so white could keep an outpost piece on f5. And that's exactly what occurred here, knight h4 now. Also, is this tactic any good to unleash the bishop on? Let's have a quick look at this. Knight takes e4, there'll be knight d5 unfortunately, so that's attacking the queen with tempo and winning material. Because if, say, queen d8, try and keep the attack going there, then knight takes, check. And if queen takes, the queen's protecting the knight. And this is no good, d5, because queen takes d5. So white will be a piece up. So knight h4 is technically, tactically playable. So f5 is annoying for black. Black doesn't really want to play g6, weakening yet another sort of pawn here, making that looser. Black instead plays bishop f8. So after queen f3, knight d7, now knight h5. White's able to keep a piece outpost there on f5. Now the bishop returns back to this diagonal. So you can see black's pawns are not particularly useful for defending the light squares. They're kind of static, and white's making the most of the light squares in black's position. Bishop e6. Now an interesting move, compromising white's pawn structure, volunteering to have double pawns and isolated pawn here, double pawns here. So this looks a bit wretched. So what has white got in terms of dynamic compensation? Well, there's the d file pressure, there's d6, there's d5, there's a potential useful pivot square, and also there's the b file. So there's some dynamics going on which compensate for this structural damage. So it's what would Jeremy Silman would call imbalances in the position. So we have now quite an imbalanced position. But white's got still some pressure with this knight, and that always helps if you've got structural damage. h4, sealing off any knight g5s. g4 now. So white's not worried to try and go for a sort of caveman attack on this side of the board. We see now Queen D3, so now this gives the possibility of Queen D5 at some point. Now Rook G6, so has this been quite a cunning little manoeuvre to try and weaken or attack White's king? Well, White just plays F3, H5. So has White blundered here with all this pressure on the G file? Has he been playing too casually? White just plays G5 though. Now we have F6. And now, to parry this pressure, White just plays king move to F1. So why can't this pawn just be taken? Well, it did take the pawn, but can it be taken now with knight takes G5? Have a quick look. Knight takes G5. White might have knight H4 here. So if the rook moves, bishop takes G5. So that's winning the exchange. So is there any compensation for the exchange here? It doesn't look like it. So that's why this G pawn is currently immune, because of that HG5 has vacated the H4 square tactically. So Black played Rook E6. Now White tries to use the B file, because this rook has really been distracted by this time loss. So White can now pounce on this B file, and also now get onto this D5. So there's a lot of pressure now being exerted on Black's position. There's now also Rook B7 threatened. So this rook's wasted a lot of time, and White's getting into key attacking squares here, which he uses now with Rook B7. So there's Queen E8. And now there's a very nice tactic that was played. I'll give you 5 seconds to see if you can spot it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds go. Just kidding. No, the tactic was Knight E7. Check. So this is an interference move. The Queen protecting the Rook no longer because of this knight check. So King F7 to try and defend this Rook. But it's pretty nasty because it's putting the King in the firing line. Knight C6 check. And this is horrible. Black's losing material by force. The King moves back here. And now can you spot another little tactic? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Knight D8. Just winning the exchange. So Queen takes E6. So White's just got one position now materially, and also the attack rages on with Queen F7. So this is almost mating, but Black would have to give up material now. So I finally played game by Keres, and showing that earlier on you can sometimes sacrifice your structure for the dynamic compensation. So that bishop C4 was very instructive here, just allowing this isolated pawn and double pawns, because he thought the B and D files could be useful later. And also this, this sort of caveman attack on the king side was quite interesting, because it did gain a lot of space, and perhaps lured the black rooks to waste some time. So it was a nicely flowing game after that. Excellent game by Keres.